everyone, this is the Wreckcreate Reality Podcast with Michael and Teresa. Today, we are talking the Traitors US Season 3, Episode 9. For anyone who hasn't watched the show, there are massive spoilers ahead. In today's episode, I'm just gonna say, "Ah!" And if you've missed the episode, you can catch all the action on your local streaming services. The Traitors US Season 3, Episode 9, breakdown coming up. Yeah, what an episode. What did you think? That was a lot. It was a lot.
Oh, I am so emotional. I was so emotional watching it. It's been a couple of days now and I still haven't processed it completely. If gaslighting was an episode, that would be it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was frustrating, painful, heartbreaking, annoying, all of these emotions.
Yeah, and I think so just to give everyone a little bit of perspective, Caroline had just gotten banished by Danielle, and I admit it was a very hard episode to watch for me, because I think I just feel so much for Carolyn. She's actually been such a great character on the show. I feel so much empathy for her. And, like she says, doing a show like this, it's not easy for someone like her, and you can just see her. And all along, we've always said, okay, with Caroline, she's just such a great traitor. She's just completely flown under the radar. No one expects it to be her. That said, I think when it came to debating for her life on the show, it's just not something that she's going to be very good at. Yeah, and unfortunately, that was just her undoing.
Yeah, I think so. Good people aren't good at bad things. That's the takeaway I have from this. You know what I mean? And lying doesn't come natural to good people. That's not to say that Danielle's a bad person, but I had doubts. I had doubts about. I always felt everyone was saying on social media and in the forums, Carolyn's going to win this, Carolyn's going to win this, she's got a lock. But my fear was that her roundtable performance and skills were going to be tested. And until we got to see how she performed at the roundtable, she was always going to be a question mark. And this game is so tough.
It's very tough. I mean, you don't actually realize the actual skills. I mean, firstly, you have to hold yourself under pressure, be good at lying, be okay. There's a lot of guilt with actually, voting out people that are actually faithful. So on top of that, you also have to be very good at debating. Should you come under the pressure of being accused? To be honest, I think if Caroline hadn't been brought up at the round table, she actually could have just cruised through just gotten to the end. But unfortunately, something like that was going to come up. I think you've actually made a really good point in our previous episodes by saying that this was always going to be the test point.
Yeah.
And it did come up. And unfortunately, unfortunately, she just got banished.
Yeah. The painful part for me was feeling, okay, it brought back a childhood memory, and I'm sorry to digress, okay, but when I was a kid, my name is Michael, there was another kid called Michael in my class. It was kindergarten, and they were causing trouble behind me, and a girl yelled out, "Michael's kicking me," and the teacher got up and kicked me in the shin really hard, right? And this is a childhood memory that still stays with me. And obviously, there was another Michael in the class, and it was him. But I couldn't say anything. I didn't have the words. I was still a child. But the memory still stuck with me that I don't have the ability to articulate this situation yet, and this isn't fair. And I wanted to say there's more than one Michael in the class, but I was a child. That's how I felt watching Caroline. This frustration of her not being able to articulate her situation, her powerlessness, being gaslit. It was hard, it was painful, and I feel like this has been symptomatic of her whole life in a way.
Yeah. I mean, even she says for her, the game, she just wanted to come in and have fun. And I think doing this at the round table is just definitely not fun. So shall we go back to start from the beginning, what happens in Traitors Tower? Let's bring it back.
Okay, so we can see in the turret Brittany and Caroline, the bad body language.
Daniel and Caroline?
Sorry, Daniel and Caroline. The bad body language between them. They are just not connecting. Everything that Carolyn says Brittany... Danielle, sorry, I'm still scattered off this episode. Danielle is hands in head, sighing, and Carolyn, everything that Danielle says, she's rolling her eyes and
I think it brings to us like the stark contrast between them because they are very, very different.
Ebony and Ivory.
Yeah, that is it.
Sorry,
yeah,
but
it is.
It's not a race thing, but like they clash on so many ways.
They do. I think like where Danielle can be like quite logical and direct, Caroline is just pure emotion. Even the way that they kind of like debate over things, it's just. And I think a lot of times it's maybe just like the argument styles are just very different from each other.
A lack of trust, a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding of each other and respect. That's the main thing that I found really hard to watch, the lack of respect in this episode. And we see it start here. Every time Carolyn comes up with an idea, Danielle shoots it down. Every time, and vice versa.
And vice versa, I think.
To be fair.
Yeah, I think like, when you don't have trust between two characters, much less traitors, well, it's just not going to work out. I mean, Boston Rob, he did like, foreshadow, and he says like, once when he was actually banished, he was like, well, it's really just up to the two of them, and the show has kind of been building up towards this. What did you think about so we kind of like left off as to they were debating between Danielle bringing on Brittany as a recruit.
Okay. I think Carolyn was right to be paranoid and to put up a block here because had Brittany come in, she was doomed. They were going to set her up. It would have been a 2v1. Can you imagine the two of them ganging up her? And $1 million or $500,000, whatever it is, doesn't split nicely 3 ways. It looks pretty good 2 ways, but 3 ways, it doesn't look that appetizing. You know what I mean? Especially after Uncle Tax comes in and takes half of that.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's never going to work 3 ways. That
said, though, I did think that because there was some heat on Brittany, so if, like, if Caroline could maybe kind of, like, overcome her emotions, and actually think of it from, like, a sacrificial point of view, Brittany actually would have been a good lamb to put up.
She would have had to be not Caroline to pull that off, though. You know what I mean? The maneuvering that would have taken, I agree, if she was not Carolyn.
If Caroline was maybe
the maneuvering that would have taken, if she was Boston Rob or Bob or blah. Yeah, I'm surprised that Gabby wasn't seriously considered as a traitor at this late stage, but I think there's no sus on Gabby, so neither of them saw her as a valid contributor.
Well, I think at this point, there's just no trust between Caroline and Danielle, so
they don't want to,
it's just not going, they're just not going to be able to agree on a recruit, and I think the next, option was just to murder.
Yeah, and so we get to the breakfast table the next morning, and there's a knock at the door. What do you think about the knocks? See, I have a theory about this. They always knock and they go, sorry, this is going to make a loud sound on the mic. Right? And they'll go, ooh, that sounds like a girl. Or, that's a man's knock. Right? I think it's all BS because a woman is going to knock harder so that she's sure that it's heard.
Yeah.
And a man is going to be afraid that they're going to break the door. So they're going to knock gently. So
and also, if they knock too loudly, it's going to come off as, like, too aggressive,
aggressive, like, oh, I'm a man. So, like, the only one that would knock hard is Tom, I think.
He would just, like, want to be, like, the leader.
So I don't think the knocking theory applies at all. I was going to say, this just came to mind also. What do you think about the theory that traitors never come in last through the door at the breakfast table? And is that a valid point of theory?
This is something that you've brought up.
Yeah.
Throughout every time we watch the Traitors, so I'm just going to okay. So I think maybe you feel you haven't talked about it enough. I feel like we have, because I'm like, but we have actually seen in, like, previous episodes that Traitors have actually come through at the door last.
Yeah,
that's
I just
what I
don't see it enough because I think for the suspense of the show, it tends to be not a traitor, but obviously the contestants aren't thinking that way. But
really, because I've always thought the last people to come in have always been the last 3 people who are likely to be murdered, and sometimes it's a traitor, sometimes it's not.
Okay, I'm gonna have to go back over the receipts and check it to see.
You might have to do that
because maybe it's a bit biased, my perception of it, but Anyway, speaking of knocks.
We can revisit that again if you want. Like, you know, I know it comes up every now and then, and I'm like, okay, rolling my eyes, but okay fine.
All right. Speaking of hard knocks, the kill is Sam. Let's talk Sam for a little bit before we go back to the main episode.
Okay.
So,
yes.
Sam is the kill. What do you think about Sam?
I think it was probably likely to be him because he wasn't very much featured in the first half of the season, and then suddenly after Boston Rob had gotten banished, and then it seems like he was speaking up a lot more.
Yeah.
And Danielle had clocked that he's actually very smart. When he was like laying a trap for the 5 people who were coming in.
Exactly.
You know, like saying, oh, you know, the one that can't describe Alan.
Yeah.
You know,
he's most likely a traitor. Yeah.
At the church is most likely a traitor. So I thought that was actually very, very good intuition. He's very perceptive. He says that it seems like he listens a lot more rather than talks. You know, quite the opposite of Tom. You know, so I thought that was actually a very likely kill.
And he hasn't shown allegiance to any of the traitors, like, say, Dylan or Brittany, which will protect you. It's a tough game because you have to hunt traitors, but you also have to find a traitor that you cling on to and make your ride or die, like the way Dylan and Brittany have, which is why they're in a great situation.
Yeah.
Sam didn't do that. He was sort of a lone wolf along with Iva. And so I think that was, if there was a deficit to his game, it was that he hadn't found a ride or die traitor. But how do you do these things?
Yeah,
you know,
I think so.
It's tough.
Yeah, well, I do think so at the breakfast table, it seems like there was suspicion on Danielle, and I've actually been wanting. Okay, so this is just my personal opinion. I have actually been wanting Danielle to be banished for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes I find watching her on the show to be a little bit cringy.
Yep.
Yeah, I've actually really liked Caroline, and I've actually been looking forward to this kind of like showdown between them. Unfortunately, the showdown was not what I anticipated.
Yeah.
But it seems like there was suspicion on Danielle, as we've said before.
There was a lot of suspicion, and you know, a lot of people post-show in interviews that I've seen with Rob, Ciara, have been unimpressed, disgusted, and downright angry at her game. And I think there's a couple of reasons to that. I think that there's something to the integrity of a traitor. I think that she has been using a lot of mental health performances, issues, and leverage to get people to garner sympathy.
Yeah.
Ciara even said that she swore on her children and things like that.
That's a big thing.
It's a big line.
Yeah, that's a big line. I mean, would you ever swear on our pets?
No, just don't say it. I would never. Sherlock, there's Sherlock, our child. I would never swear on you, Sherlock.
Our firstborn.
Just not. I wouldn't risk it. You know what I mean? I think just don't bring it up. If the game means that much to you, then so be it. It is a game, but there are certain things I would never cross.
Well, you just don't know, like, what karma's going to serve you.
Yeah, and also, like, to shake and say I have mental health issues as a sympathy point, and the way she's been using that to garner sympathy.
Yeah.
It's very strong and it's very divisive. I'm sure some people out there think it's amazing acting.
Yeah, probably.
But
I'm sure.
I do know that it's peeing off a lot of people.
Yeah. I think that's also the part that I find cringy is, you know, like mental health, I think, is a big issue, and it's one thing to have it, but to actually be in it, and then, you know, it's a really hard thing to do, much less in this game. But I think to kind of like piggyback off it, you know, and to use it as a tactic, like you're a victim.
That's what it is.
It just feels disingenuous. I think even for a show that is meant to be based on disingenuity.
I know I don't know whether it's masterful or horrible. It's masterfully horrible. Maybe both things can be true.
Maybe both are true.
Right?
I know.
Tell us what you think in the comments, because I know this is dividing a lot of people. This is the episode, other than Rob v. Bob, that I think has lit up Twitter, Instagram, and all social media, because it's made people so upset either way. And I'd love to hear what the general consensus is.
Yeah.
I generally avoid a lot of social media pre-recording of an ep because I don't want to colour what I'm going to say. But I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Because I think now when I think about it, on one hand, I guess you have to do what you have to do to get through. You know, and if you're a traitor, well, you are meant to be treacherous.
Yeah.
I know, but on the other hand, it's like, yeah.
And what we see early on is Danielle planting seeds, and she's saying stuff like, you know, to Dolores, if you notice, the faithful are all eloquent and nice, like me. And the traitors,
respectful and elegant, yeah.
And the traitors attack, and she does this nasty thing, attack, and
and I think that's it. Like, I think sometimes her actions, they're just so exaggerated and so like almost kind of like corny.
Yeah, and it's not true at all, because if you think about it, Bob was an attacker, but Rob was elegant and calm.
Yeah.
Traitors come in all shapes and sizes, but what she is doing clearly is setting up her v Caroline.
Yeah.
She might as well say, if you notice, you know, traitors have tattoos and are blonde and have been on Survivor, and faithfuls wear Bonnie hats and have really white teeth. You know, and look like Vanessa Williams. Like, you know, like she is just setting up this thing with Dolores to foreshadow this thinking that she's going to use later on. And it's clever. It is. Because she knows that Brittany... has a weakness. Caroline has a weakness with her emotions.
Yeah.
That she gets emotional, that she gets upset, that she can fumble her words, and it can get the best of her. And that's what's so tough, because she's such an emotional person. So to play into her past and her Caroline, who has suffered mental health issues, drug issues, homelessness.
Yeah.
She's had a really tough story, and to almost exploit that as a way of winning the game was hard to watch.
I think so. I think when it's like someone who's actually really suffering from it versus someone who's actually, like, say, putting on an act.
Yeah.
I think, like, say, when Boston Rob was going against Bob the drag queen, you know, it was a very equal fight. You know, it was like 1-on-1. Each one had his strengths.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, Bob the drag queen, like, he used emotion as well, but he was just angry and vengeful.
Yeah.
And, you know, like he had it. I think he used it to his advantage. It wasn't like he was at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
You know, but then with this one, it just felt like someone who was just bigger and stronger, more articulate, picking on someone who was a lot weaker.
Just like my primary school teacher kicking me in the shins.
Yeah, I think that's what was just really hard to watch. Okay, so now we have this scene where Brittany and Danielle, they're kind of like being vulnerable with each other.
This is interesting. And I think...
so I think firstly, Brittany was saying to Danielle, I think, like, what I'm so glad that you're here is that I don't know what I would have done if you weren't here, if you had gotten murdered. I mean, if you had gotten murdered, yes.
Yeah. And Danielle is like, I think on the verge of telling her, like,
I kind of thought that as well.
Like, hang on, girl. Do what I say. In a day's time, you and I will be traitors and we're going to run this show. You know what I mean? I think she's so close to saying that. Because this secret inside, this guilt must be killing her. The tension, the stress is building up. And she probably just wants to include her to get some relief. It's such a hard thing to hold this secret for so long. And she wants to include her, share this money with her, clearly.
Yeah.
They have this history from Big Brother, I think, where...
Well, but actually Danielle was betrayed by Brittany, though. So I'm going to put a different take because, I do think that Danielle likes having a +1. Because she was very set on Bob the drag queen being her +1, her ride or die, all the way to the very end. But don't forget that in the previous episode, when she was bringing up Brittany for recruitment, she also did say that, hey, Brittany's, you know, head could be on the chopping block, so she could be a sacrificial lamb. So in a way, I can see that she feels guilty by this. But on the other hand, I'm also like, well, like, you know, is this all but
do you
an
think
act
she was
as
saying
well?
that as a way to convince Carolyn that she could get rid of Brittany, though?
Well, okay. Do you think, like, okay, if push comes to shove, do you think Danielle would put Brittany up?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She's gonna...
She will.
I think she has an out. You're right. I think yes, she wants to be loyal to Brittany.
Yeah.
But she has a clause in that contract that says if you betray me, it's not ride or die.
It's not a ride or die.
It's like, ride or you die.
I think sometimes a lot of people, and even like sometimes in Survivor, they're like, oh, you're my ride or die,
No.
like we've just found, like, we've just watched the Australian Survivor, people are just
no such thing.
throwing this thing out like ride or die, but like it actually isn't if you're not telling them about your idol. It isn't if you're presenting them up as a sacrificial lamb. Like, that's not what a ride or die is, and I feel like people are just like simply just throwing this thing out like it's a...
Like 1,000,000%.
Yeah, like it's the most popular term now,
I know, and it's not ride or die. Ride or die literally means
ride
you
or
die.
Die. Yeah, you die. You die together.
Ride or $1 million should be the expression, right? I ride or $1 million.
Yeah.
Brittany. But anyway, yeah, I think Brittany and Danielle were very close to having a moment there where they were going to pull off their masks and reveal the veil was almost going to come down. And I think the veil did come down, but I don't think Brittany was aware enough to see it. I think Danielle really did pull down her mask and say, the way she said, just vote with me, just trust me at the vote, had to have clued in Brittany, if she was a little bit more on it, that you're onto something and that you're a traitor and that you're about to take down another traitor. It should have, because faithfuls are never so definitive.
No.
Faithfuls never say that. Faithfuls never say, wait for the round table, I got his ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Unless it's Derek versus Rob. He was very sure, but Rob was by that point just being obvious. There was literally, Rob could have come down to the breakfast table with blood on his face and on his hands and said, hey, someone's trying to set me up. Hey, how about those Red Sox?
Okay. Well, in this case, I do feel like, okay, because the heat's been on Brittany for quite a while, she's probably feeling in a position of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think she's glad that Danielle's got her in the corner. Got her, like, they're together in the corner. So I think that's where she's coming from. Whether she has suspicions on Danielle, there could be. It doesn't seem like it's shown in this scene.
No.
But,
I would have liked a cross interview back there in the edit with Brittany to ask, do you suspect? You know what I mean? That would have been nice. That would have been nice for the edit. Or like, no, she's 100% a faithful.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen that in the edit. Anyway, shall we go to the challenge?
Yeah, let's go to the challenge. So I think this was one of my favorite challenges. We've seen it on the UK series that has just ended. I think both you and I, we probably like this challenge because it's one of those like question, like answers, and it gives you an idea of like what people think. It's very revealing.
Yeah.
And you can often, and I think sometimes, like people, sometimes they're not surprised. They are surprised, like, when their name does come up, about like, oh, who's the sneakiest, who's the most treacherous.
And there's a lot of double play here.
There is.
Going on. It's a little bit like poker when you have hearts, an ace, and they have a card. You're faking that you have it, but then you pretend that you do have it because you want to show strength, but then there's play and interplay, fake, double fake, all these kind of things that are going on. And I think this is the beginning of where Carolyn falls apart. I'm sorry to say.
It is. I know. It is. So before we get to that, okay, what did you think? Okay, so I think the big surprise of this challenge was that Parvati and Kate actually,
two queens.
Two queens just actually came, and I was just so surprised. To be honest, I actually they were dressed. Okay, so firstly, they were dressed fabulously.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, much to the point that Brittany actually felt so self-conscious, like walking up in her like pink hoodie. It's like, oh, please don't judge me on my outfit.
It was like high school.
If I had known that we were like dressing up for this challenge, I would have.
If I knew you two, because Kate is such a bi itch, to people's costumes. So I think she felt scared to be in her presence, and she was like, please don't be mean to me, Kate.
I know.
Because Kate was legendary in her season. Like, I get Parvati. She's a social reality media queen.
Yeah.
But Kate is just mean.
Yeah.
So I don't know why they brought
feel
these
like
two.
as women, when we go to an outing, we're always like, I mean, we always, everyone wants to be like the best dressed, and if you're not, you kind of like just suss out each other's outfit and like try and say a compliment if you feel graceful enough.
I know, but this was so funny to see
I
her.
Thought it was great.
Yeah, but they look amazing. Very much the Galinda and Alpha look.
Yes.
White witch, black witch type of look.
Yeah.
Very fantastic. And what do you think of Alan's crown?
That was amazing. I really liked it. To be honest, at first I thought what he had was actually hair wrapped. there was a time when in No Doubt, Gwen Stefani,
yes,
you know, when she was in her very like punk rocker girl phase, she always had these like little hair buns all over her head. That's what I thought they were in the beginning, but then I was like, wait, Alan doesn't have that much hair. Yeah. And then on closer inspection, they're actually chest pieces. You know, so that's a great, I think it's a great headpiece.
And with a coat that's very 101 Dalmatians, a lot of cross references to different like checkerboard as well.
Yeah, checkerboard, the Argyle, like, you know, houndstooth kind of.
Yeah,
like,
very, very, very intricate. Gosh, the costuming on this season is it probably outdoes the whole reward. You know what I mean? Like, they are spending millions on dressing these.
Well, the thing was, I mean, like, Parvati and Kay just came on literally for like half an hour.
How does that work?
And that's just, I mean, they obviously paid
below
to
the
do
budget.
this. Yeah, I mean, they didn't really need to be there. Okay, I mean, like, to be honest, okay, it's great that they came on. There was like a little bit of like a fashion, you know, Devil Wears Prada moment, but I honestly didn't feel that they needed to be there, unless if there was maybe some sort of like, if they were gonna be like there later in the season again.
It's promotional, right? Yeah. Like, it's something they're gonna use in the promotion, in the ads. Guess who comes up this episode?
Yeah, and maybe maybe they tag, you know, like the traitors on their Instagram.
It's all that, right?
Okay,
like,
I get you now.
So now they can get all the Below Deck fans. They get the Survivor fans back for one ep. Oh, I got to see Parvati. Parvati's everywhere.
Parvati's everywhere. Oh like, my god, I think she's like in Deal or No Deal
Island. It's like she doesn't do anything else other than reality TV.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and so we watch the chessboard thing, and obviously what they have to do is the traitors were given questions the night before, such as who's the most innocent, who's the most crafty, who's the most under the table, da-da-da, and traitors give their answers, and then this group have to try and guess what the traitors picked to win the money.
Yeah.
So very quickly, the night before, Danielle understands this isn't about winning money. No. It's almost about looking innocent. So I have to pick answers that go against what I feel, but what the group feels.
Yeah.
And on the day, I have to act like I'm not pushing the answer.
Yeah.
She understood that. She even says, I have to lose money to look innocent.
To be honest, I think Caroline understood that as well, like in Traitors Tower, because she did say that as well. But in the heat of the moment, when you're there, you know, you can't help but kind of like, oh my god, I also like, you know, want to do this, like want to win some money, you know. I also want to like, you know, like be seen as innocent. And I feel like that's where it kind of like undoes for her, because a lot of the, like, say, I think there was the question was, okay, whose voice is the most irrelevant? And she,
that was the one.
Like, put herself up. And it's kind of interesting because it's ironic, because if you have an irrelevant voice, suddenly, you know, you're the one that's becoming outspoken and pushing for it.
And it's out of character.
It's out of character.
Because she's never argued like this. She's never.
I think she's always kind of like kept, like she's always been herself, but she's never actually like say really very much attacked, you know, or like, you know, argued, except for Danielle.
Being out of character is what defines or clues people in that you're a traitor. Carolyn in character would have again said something like, well, if you guys think I'm irrelevant, then there's nothing I can do about that, and just backed away. And being quiet.
Maybe even appear hurt about it.
Maybe even appear hurt
because, like, you know, this would probably be like a big trigger for her, you know.
But for her for it to steer towards another player and then to say no, come back here, to me is odd, especially when no one else in the group is saying her name as irrelevant.
Do you think they were thinking it but just not saying it?
I think they were thinking it without saying it. They wanted to be polite.
Yeah.
But it was odd. It was odd. Especially when in the other questions, going through the other questions, one of them was who is the least threatening, and it was Brittany that was put up, and biggest threat, and it was Brittany who was put up, and this was smart on Danielle's part to lay these traps, because it allowed. Because Brittany was then going to look at, if Brittany's put up as the person who is most threatening in this game, she's now going to look at, in the castle, who she's most at conflict with. Mm-hmm. And that happened to be Carolyn. Not that she was in conflict with anyone, but I think Danielle is the closest person she's with, so she's just not going to look at Danielle.
Okay.
And Danielle could have steered her towards Carolyn. I think
Yeah.
that was just smart play on Danielle's part in this challenge.
Okay.
In setting that up.
Yeah, I did find myself not understanding it at first when they had the question as to like who is the biggest threat to the traitors, because they both knew it was Dylan. They agreed that it was Dylan in the tower.
Yeah.
But then after that, they both said, okay, so in that case, we cannot pick Dylan. And I was like wondering, why did they say that?
I think it's because... Sorry, to go.
So I think it was because, well, if Dylan is the biggest threat, why hasn't he been murdered?
Exactly.
And
then he's going to look at who he's
Yeah.
closest with. That's it.
Yeah, and he's
think
going to
you
be like,
answered it.
well, yeah, if I'm, you know, like who else is keeping me here? In
think
which
you
case,
answered
it's Caroline and Danielle. So I think that's why they picked. Yeah, I think Danielle pushed for Brittany, which was a very smart move on her, because I think it took me a while to kind of like ponder that.
I think that's it. I think you unwrapped it. Funnily enough, though, whenever who's the most good looking, who's the best leader, Tom is like hands up. He's hilarious, and he even has a reputation with Kate and Parvati, who are like, this guy's gonna put his hand up for everything. He must be LA's biggest reality himbo, I think. Do you think he must just rock around LA and just have a real rep?
Yeah, what did you think about the fact that, so he put himself up as the leader, and I think Caroline also put him up as the leader, but then after that, when, you know, she got defensive and said that, oh, you know, I didn't actually put Tom up.
Yeah, because Dolores
Yeah.
says, Carolyn was the one that said Tom
You know,
was the
and,
leader.
and, you know, if we had followed her, you know, we would have been correct and actually won that money. And then suddenly Carolyn just looks sus and be like, yeah, but I didn't say Tom.
I didn't say, she should have owned that moment.
Oh, that was hard to watch, actually.
She should have said, because the true faithful would have said, yeah, I did. So, who thinks that but isn't saying that? Or something like that. Or maybe that's too sus. But her reaction to that and acting defensive and all of that was just so out of character, heightened, and suspicious. It just drew attention to her.
It did. I
when,
think so.
When no one is looking at anyone else and you're acting defensive and odd, then you're just giving Danielle ammunition.
I think
for
so.
later on in the episode, which she loaded her gun to the full clip with.
Yeah, she did. I think that was also like the time when we kind of like, oh my god, this is going to like undo her later on at the round table.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does.
It does. So then we get to pre-round table, and Ivar is kind of sneaky. Royals, a true royal killer. So we see him sort of bringing up Danielle's name to Carolyn, and then going to Danielle and telling Danielle that Carolyn has been saying her name.
Okay,
so he's
I
working
think
both sides.
He kind of is. Okay, so let's just give everyone a bit of a recap. So what happens is, I think Ivar and Caroline are talking.
Yep.
Caroline Ivar was the one that actually brought up Danielle's name, and Caroline agreed with him.
Just agreed.
Agreed with him. And then in a next clip, we actually see Ivar telling Danielle that, oh, your name has actually been brought up.
Yes.
You know, and then when she asks us who, he says, by Caroline. You know, even though he was the one that brought it up in the first place.
So this is kind of smart and sneaky.
It is. So I think Ivar's very good. He's very diplomatic.
Yes.
And I feel like that's just one of those skills that as a royal you have to learn in order, you just talk, you know.
To move up the
I
the
think
royal
so.
ladder.
I mean, like, you know, I've seen not interviews, I mean, like, you know, when, say, Prince Charles is, like, come to Australia, they are very deft at making small talk. They never, ever put any attention onto themselves. There was this, I think one guy, he said, I think he was sitting next to Queen Elizabeth, and he said that the whole time, Queen Elizabeth never actually talked about herself. She just kept asking questions of him, like, what does he do? Or what an interesting profession. Can you tell me more about it? And she made him feel like he was the most important person in the room, even though she is.
Yeah. That's what they do. I mean, can you imagine the amounts of dinners and functions and weddings and things these people have to attend in a year? It's hundreds. And so they get very deft and adept at small talk and maneuvering these social circles, and you see it here. he's been played off as not being there, like furniture.
Not doing much, like just making the guy making the butler making the tea.
Yeah, he's one to watch out for, because here he makes a move. I think he's one of the stars of the episode, other than the two mains. In the way he gets these two to go against each other and makes himself safe. As long as he doesn't get murdered in the middle of the night, he is a good bet.
Yeah.
And
I think it's also important to note that when you actually do feel something but you don't bring it up, it makes you look sus. But he actually obviously has these premonitions that he feel, okay, like suspicions about Danielle.
Yeah.
And he actually does put forth this introduction. I was like, okay, there have been two names that have been brought up, or there have been like, you know, I think that there are two traitors left, and it is likely that they are both women.
Yeah.
You know, so it just, I guess it's a good introduction. Like, he tells everyone of his suspicions, firstly, of his opinions. He's not afraid to not divulge anything. But on the other hand, it lets in everyone into the discussion to debate over it.
Good call.
He's very, very good.
He sets the stage so well.
Yeah.
And they also bring up Columbo, and this makes me feel old, because later on, Carolyn has no idea who Columbo is. I do. He's my father's favorite detective, so I grew up watching Columbo. But anyway, I digress. And even pre-roundtable, Ivar and Tom say Carolyn couldn't pull this off. She couldn't be a traitor as soon as she leaves the room. So in a way, she has the room, if you know what I mean. She has the atmosphere of the room in her favor. All she has to do now is play along with the mood of the room. But unfortunately, what we see ahead is not that.
Yeah, and, I think so.
For example, she sits down with Dylan pre-roundtable, and she sits with Dylan, and instead of being rational about her points and putting the blame on Danielle, she literally tells her life story. And it's very touching and heartwarming, but it becomes an emotional moment that doesn't actually lay the grounds for any facts and rational thinking. And from Dylan's perspective, who is very rational and, you know, logical based,
analytical,
this isn't going to sway him. You know? And yeah, also what she does is she stops Dolores from coming into the room, which is an immediate way of stopping someone from, you know, coming to your side. When you divide them and you make them feel alienated, that's immediately going to make him go, oh, you know, there are conversations you don't want me a part of.
Yeah, are you talking about me?
Yeah, you know, so I just noticed these little touches that Caroline was doing pre-roundtable that were a little bit off.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to get to the roundtable. I'm just reorganizing my notes. Bear with me. Okay, roundtable. Here we go. Oh, this is tough. This is tough. Okay, this is going to be... I've been dreading talking about this because this was so emotional, so heart-wrenching, difficult to watch.
It was very difficult to watch.
It's going to be difficult to talk about, so bear with us.
Okay, so how did you feel, on each of their kind of like arguments? Like, you know, shall we start off with Caroline's?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't I go first? Okay, for me, I feel like, unfortunately, I think, like, Caroline's great in the game itself, but when it comes to presenting an argument, she's all over the place. Her only piece of evidence was that Danielle had lied.
Yeah, and she couldn't prove that. And
that is not proof. I mean, that can just be a difference of perspective, and I think everyone at the round table felt that. And you're arguing about who lied, she said this, I said this. It is just not concrete evidence. Yeah. And unfortunately, there are just so many other things I felt that she could have said.
Oh, yeah. I've got a few points here I'll get into. I think the firstly is she opened up, which is out of character. She's never opened a debate before, and she would have been better off being meek and being herself and being like, what? Who? Me? You know what I mean? But for her to open up with an attack was very strange. And also, it wasn't pointed. So she did go at Danielle, but she didn't lay down evidence. Instead, she laid out her hurt and her emotions. So she talked about her experiences. So it ended up being defensive rather than offensive. And in this game, I think you have to attack. But obviously, the more you attack, the more you expose yourself. A bit like soccer. And Carolyn, in opening up all these points, allowed herself to be vulnerable.
I think so.
I think, okay, some points that she could have brought up.
Okay, yeah.
I think she needed to bring up the riddle puzzle, the way that Danielle replaced her name several times in that puzzle by taking down her picture and putting up Dolores, putting up Derek. Just very odd behavior.
Yeah, like she's not scared of being murdered.
She's not being scared of murdered. And Danielle has never showed herself to be scared of murdered.
Yeah.
And when she does, she shakes. And yet when she is in a position of strength, she doesn't shake. So if you'll notice this round table, Danielle did not shake.
She did actually a little bit. Like I think there was a moment. I think
pre-round table.
Pre-round table. No. That was at the round table.
Oh, was it? Okay.
There was
okay.
just a very. That was just like
maybe
a couple of seconds. Up. She was literally like shaking.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know which part of the round table it was. But they did show it.
But it's not consistent. You
know
what I mean?
Yes.
So she shows vulnerability in shaking at certain points, but she shows immense strength when bullying someone weaker, like Carolyn, and she's literally, her body language goes from being like this to leaning forward, pointing, making faces, insulting her. It was just very obvious that this was the change of character that Carolyn needed to point out. But Carolyn didn't go there, and instead she put the focus on her own emotion and her own trauma. The overacting also from Danielle, but instead, she focused, as you said, on the lie. And the other point that I would have brought up is the closest people argument. Danielle, in a previous episode, said the people closest to me are getting killed, so I can't be a traitor. Well, that's not true. The closest people to her are Dylan and Brittany. And they're still there.
They're still there.
Why are they still here?
Yeah.
Dylan is the best traitor hunter in the house, and he's still around. So who is the person he is most loyal to? We have to look at Danielle.
Yeah.
You're the one keeping her here. And the last argument that I would have said if I was Caroline is, if I'm a traitor, why haven't I killed you? Because you clearly have been gunning for me the past 3 episodes. You mentioned my name 2 episodes ago. You lied about me. If I was a traitor, I just would have got rid of you. But I haven't. I think this is the best argument for if you're a traitor. Why haven't I killed you? You've been gunning for me, and I've left you here. And if Danielle flips it and says, well, why haven't you killed me? I would say, well, Rob was why haven't I killed you? I would say Rob was defending me. You know, you wanted to kill me, I'm suspecting, but Rob has kept me around. I voted with Rob many times, and he was my protector in this house as a faithful. I think you were trying to kill me, but Rob stopped you and blocked you.
Okay, yeah.
But the best defense, I'm sorry to go on.
No,
but the best defense that Carolyn could have said is, I could never pull this off.
I think that's the best defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe that's the one that people will be like, yes, she could just never pull it. I mean, like, even Ivor and Tom were just saying, do you think she could be a traitor? No, I just don't think she can.
In fact,
I think that is just
that's all she should have said. Because now that I think about it, had she said all that stuff, it would have looked weird and out of character. She would have sounded like me, not her.
Yeah, which is not her.
Which is not her.
Yeah.
For her to suddenly become a lawyer in this moment would have been bizarre.
Yeah.
So what she needed to say is that final succinct point that I'm making is, I could never be a traitor. I could never be a traitor. I could never be a traitor. Danielle could be a traitor. She's smart. She's articulate. She's an actress. She likes to act. Look at all these performances. I couldn't do this.
Yeah, I can't just like bring on
do this.
I can't bring on the tears like she has when I cry. I am truly, truly emotional. I just cannot pull it off. And I mean, like, you know, to all of you guys, do you think I can pull it off?
Yes, that would have won her the argument.
God.
What do you think of Danielle saying, you do this acting silly and dumb thing and you Forrest Gump a lot?
That was actually very hard.
This was the peak of cringe.
Yeah, this was just very hard. I mean, I think...
Like, Forrest Gump is a mentally disabled person.
I know. I felt like
you're literally saying you're mentally disabled.
Yeah, I know. I felt like... I don't know. I felt like she just totally humiliated Caroline. And I don't know... I don't know if it was... I don't know if that was, like, just really necessary.
No, it wasn't.
You know, because the thing was that, like Caroline is already at a disadvantage. It just wasn't. It wasn't kind. I think it was almost cruel.
It was. She didn't need to go this far, but she did use good evidence of the chessboard.
She did use very good evidence. Yes, but I think maybe to attack her character.
Yeah. She touched a nerve. Let's just say that in all of us. Yeah. And emotion betrays a traitor, ultimately, because emotion, being a traitor, is stressful. It's exhausting. There's so much tension. It brings out so much of that. And I think you saw that in this episode. Danielle provoking that emotion out of Carolyn to the point she tipped over and just broke down in tears. Even in interviews this week that I've seen of Carolyn, whenever she brings up this episode, she just cries talking about it. It is clearly very, very tough for her.
Yeah, it is.
To talk about.
I think it was just very hard to watch because I think when you kind of because the points that I think had she just kept it to so this was what I felt was very good when say Derek and Wes and Rob, when they present their arguments, they kind of focus on the other person's good traits and how that would actually make them good as a traitor.
Yes.
Derek was very good when he was gunning for Boston Rob. He laid out the facts. He didn't say Boston Rob was conniving. He didn't say that he was sneaky, when he could have, but he just laid out the facts very logically.
And was nice. And kind about it.
I think
even
so.
Rob says about Wes, he's so charismatic, he's so smart, he would make a great traitor. When Rob took down Bob, he was like, there's only one guy who is smart and charismatic.
And who has the floor, who has the
command.
Yeah, the command, and the admiration of everyone in this room.
Instead, Danielle just picked at a scab and called her Forrest Gump. I didn't like it. It hurt me. I was offended. I was upset. I'm not afraid to say it. Please let us know what you think, because am I not reading the room here? Did that suck, or am I wrong?
I think she just probably showed us all. Listen, we've all been there. We've all been when we want to win an argument.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had it. Come on, between the two of us, we've said we've said absolutely cruel things to each other. Ouch. But that was in our room.
This wasn't on public TV.
This wasn't on public TV.
For a reality show, yeah.
In front of and I think it's it's this thing of almost like contempt.
Yes.
When you show contempt, point. And in front of everyone on public TV, it just, I think it just really hurts.
Yeah, it does. Last point about the round table I just want to make, and I keep on saying I'm making a last point, and then I keep going, is that what ultimately for Carolyn, what made her a good faithful betrayed her as a traitor. So what I mean is, being quirky and different, it drew away suspicion on her. It made her underestimated. But when it came time to speak up and say wolf again, she was underestimated. So her value as a quiet faithful didn't translate to being an outspoken faithful.
Yeah, and I think in this case,
ultimately her truth wasn't heard either way. That's what sucks.
She just doesn't have the debating or argumentative skills to defend herself. And we've said this before. I think that is probably the one true skill that you really need. At the round table, it is not whether you are charismatic or whether you to be honest, you can be the sneakiest person on earth, but if you actually if you can argue yourself well enough to do it. You would get ahead.
She should have just Forrest Gumped her way through it a little bit more, I think. Had she just said, I can't do this. I can't do the things you're accusing me of. I think the way you're attacking me, flip that. The way you're attacking me is so traitorous and so cruel, Danielle. And
that only a traitor could do that.
And only a traitor could do that. Stop there. Edit it. That's what she could have done. But then again, that's next level.
Well, I think I mean, sorry to jump in there,
no.
But I think to be said, I think when she did go up onto the podium, and said that she is a traitor, everyone clapped, because I think there was respect there, because I think they probably are okay, this is actually a really hard role for her.
It is.
And and I think that, okay, say if it was wrong, I felt like there was a lot of emotion around the table as well. Everyone was actually also very upset because Caroline was very upset.
Yeah.
And when it came time to actually, write her name down and to say who they voted for, they were almost apologetic for it. And I bet a lot of them were like, oh my God, if I got this wrong, this is just the worst thing I've ever done.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think she built up enough social capital and friendships.
Well, she did really with Gabby, though. But with Gabby,
yep.
Yeah, Gabby
did,
But
Danielle has more friends at that round table, I feel like. That's the thing that also undid her. And at this point, when it's traitor v traitor, it's so hard because it's almost about who has more friends. And Carolyn hadn't built up enough social capital at that round table to win this argument in many ways. But let's look at the voting. Okay, so Carolyn votes Danielle, Dolores votes Tom,
and
Gabby,
vice versa. So they're like
and Tom votes Dolores.
Yeah.
Gabby votes with Carolyn for Danielle. Danielle, Carolyn, Iva, Carolyn, Brittany, Carolyn, Dylan, Carolyn. I just wanted to say on this point, so it's 4-2 with 2 throwaways. What do you think of... So Carolyn didn't miss by far. She just... One more swing vote her way and it would have been a tie.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Dolores, Tom, Dolores throwaway votes? A lot of people are saying they hate these throwaway votes. What do you think?
Really?
Yeah, what do you think? You made an interesting point.
I don't mind them. I like them because I feel like, if you're not convinced that whoever you're voting is a traitor, I don't think you should write that down just to go with the group.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's potent in the other way because you're playing into mob mentality.
Yeah,
and things can get out of hand in a bad way.
Yeah, and I also do think that, well, it also shows, okay, like say with Tom and Dolores, if they were actually traitors, they would for sure have voted Caroline. They would have gone with the crowd, voted Caroline, because then it makes them look like a faithful.
Yeah.
The fact that the both of them didn't, I feel, is actually a very strong point for them
you'd be
being
good
a
at this
faithful.
show.
Yeah.
You'd be good at this
Because
show.
really, what do traitors do? When there is a clear majority,
They save themselves.
Yeah, they save themselves,
True. So that's true. I don't have anything to add to that.
I just think that in this case, like say Iva and Dylan being the deciding vote, like Brittany was always going to vote with Danielle.
Yeah.
Gabby was always going to vote with Caroline. But in this case, with Dylan and Iva, they've both been suspicious of Danielle. But in this case, the argument was just better against Caroline.
It was.
Yeah.
And that's what Ivar says. He simply said the points you made were better than Carolyn's.
Yeah.
Bottom line. If Carolyn was... Yeah, we've talked a lot about that. I think we covered that pretty well. Let's talk about Danielle's reaction. After.
Okay, so that's the part that pisses me off.
This pisses me off.
And I don't really like to say that I get pissed off very often. I like to be quite agreeable and
what do you think, Sherlock? Look, even Sherlock didn't like it.
Yeah, didn't like it. Okay, yeah.
He's called Sherlock, which is the most faithful name you can have, right? He's a faithful.
He's going to be a great detective, yeah. Okay, so...
man.
Okay.
She gets down. I'm going to reenact it, okay? She gets down and she covers her mouth and she starts sobbing and acting like an abuse victim, which I think just sucked so bad for her to play into that. And she starts shaking. They all surround her, hug her. She acted like a domestic abuse victim. I'm sorry to make a joke about that. It's not a joking matter. But she played into this,
Yeah.
I think... Like, is she going to do an epileptic fit after this? Or have a heart attack? You know what I mean? Like, what's next, Danielle?
It's just too much.
Oh, this sucked, man. This is not... Had she just said, thank you for believing me. Oh, man, I can't believe I was right.
Yeah, I think so.
I just wanted to defend myself, but I can't believe I was right. But it was odd because she shows vulnerability, but also certainty. Her performance is mixed.
It swings. It's like bipolar or something.
Yeah, she goes from... Oh, I'm so upset. I'm vulnerable. To I told you. I freaking told you. Just which is odd.
And also, I think to make fun,
cringe.
To kind of attack Caroline on acting silly and dumb, Forrest Gumping, and then you do this, to garner sympathy. It just feels a bit like a slap in the face.
You know what this reminds me of? I just came up with this point. Okay, this is like, I don't know if you guys have seen Wicked. Okay, this is like Galinda versus Alphaba. right? Where Galinda is popular.
Yeah.
And Alphaba isn't. And Alphaba is Carolyn. Danielle is Galinda. And anything that Galinda says, people are going to go with. And no matter what Alphaba does, it's going to be perceived as wicked. And it reminded me of that. I don't know why. Just because we just saw it recently. And I just feel like, yeah, there's this dynamic there.
Yeah, and I actually think like look, like I think everyone, a lot of people they stood up and they were like clapping.
Yeah.
You know, because they could see like how hard it has been on Caroline, but then Danielle just made it about her again. You know, yeah. Well, I guess maybe bringing it back to the wicked thing, it's like when Galinda says she's gonna change her name from Galinda to Glinda. You know, like in support of like whatever animal rights she like, you know, really does not care about.
Danielle should have stood up and said, in tribute to Carolyn, I'm changing my name to Danielle. You know, to Danielle. In solidarity with the animals and Carolyn. Because I loved her so much, Carolyn.
Yeah.
That would have been clutch.
So I think that was the part. I think that was just the nail in the coffin. Like the part where, okay, I really did not like the round table, like how she had attacked Caroline. But this, like her just like, oh, fuck, you know.
And
sorry for the swearing.
Going from not shaking to shaking uncontrollably here, like people... It's too much. Aren't people picking up on this?
Well, I think Gabby does pick up on it though, because she's like, hey, and even for me, I also like feel this kind of feels like, you know, Rob versus Bob, you know, V2.
Yes. And we'll talk about that now, I guess. So post-voting, everyone is just wiped out like us. And the redeeming thing about this is that like a murder mystery, she got away with a murder, but thankfully there are clues that people are picking up on that she's not going to get away with it. It's almost like the murdered person leaves a little crumpled up note.
Yeah.
And that's Carolyn, murdered, but she leaves a note that says, it was Danielle, you know? And there are clues here because Dolores even says, you had that nailed to Danielle. Whenever someone is that right, that convicted, that sure of themselves, they're a traitor, you know? And I have a note here, like, okay, it's going to take me a while to unpack. Okay, when it's a faithful versus a faithful, right? Say Ciara versus Nikki. Both are innocent. Both are unsure whether the other person is guilty. And so there's uncertainty there. They don't know for sure. But one thing they do know is that they are innocent. And so the argument is defensive. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating.
It's unsure. You don't know whether they are, but you know that you are, and you're trying to prove a truth that you can't prove.
Yeah, and the things that they kind of try and accuse each other of are not very concrete.
Exactly.
Things.
Exactly.
I think, yeah.
When it's faithful v traitor, it tends to be a lopsided argument because one is certain, i.e. the traitor. He knows the whole board. He has the advantage, or she. The faithful doesn't know the board, and so they are attacking somewhat blind. So, for example, Wes versus Rob. But when it's traitor v traitor, Bob v Rob, Danielle versus Carolyn, it's fascinating because both are guilty. Both know they are guilty. Both know the other person is guilty. And so what it tends to be is pure emotion, aggression, and gaslighting each other. Because you're both killers and you're both accusing the other one of being a killer too. But you are equally guilty. So it becomes a mess.
Yeah.
Basically. That's what I've noticed, this pattern. Thankfully, the other faithfuls pick up on that. Because it gave those vibes of Bob v Rob, of this pure aggression against each other and emotion. Like, you're a traitor. No, you're a traitor. You're a traitor. Do you know what I mean? When one is a faithful, or if they're both faithfuls, it's, I think you're a traitor. I'm innocent. Da da da. Yeah, it's interesting.
I know.
I don't know if I articulated the way I would have liked to, but I think there is something there in terms of the way that these debates go down.
I think so. And I think that's what makes it fascinating as well. Like, say for us, I think the shows that we really like are when there have actually been these social dynamics, when there have been conflict, and you can kind of like see when people have been under stress. And I think, it's just fascinating, like, you know, the way that they argue, the points that they make, you know, and especially as, like, say, an audience where we can see kind of like part of a whole picture.
Yeah.
You know, you can see like where misunderstandings like start to happen, you know, that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
Well, on that one note, I have to say, like, I think Gabby's smart.
Gabby's so smart.
Gabby is really smart.
I hope Gabby wins it.
Yeah, I actually think she has a really good chance, actually, because she's very, very perceptive. Yeah. Like, she comes across as very like, oh, you know, like she reminds me of like Cher.
Yeah.
No, wait.
From Clueless.
In Clueless, yes, yes. I was like thinking, wait, hold on, Cher. Like, no, not that Cher. Yeah. But anyways, like, oh, everything's just very like, you know, like kind of like banal. Like, oh, hey, you know, very Bambi-esque. Everything's okay.
She's a Bambi.
Yeah, but do not underestimate. Like, yeah, she was extremely tough in that challenge where they had to like rain all those bugs.
Yes.
She was like, okay, just blocking it out. You know, so I think under this surface of everything's okay.
It's a performance.
You know, she's very, very smart.
For her to perceive that this was traitor v traitor, the emotion out of it, she picked up on that very well. But she said it to the wrong people. She said it to Danielle, who is always going to be loyal to...
She said it to Brittany.
To Brittany, sorry. I'm getting these names. They all sound so similar. Bob, Rob, Danielle. She said it to Brittany, who was going to be loyal to Danielle, and I think this may endanger her going forward. I think she's a candidate to get killed. Let's rewind just a little bit. I think the format of the show is going to change from here on. I don't think there are going to be many murders from here on, and it's just going to be banishments, I think. Because we're getting down to the final 6 or 7. You know, so if it follows the UK version...
I think where it's like you just have 5 people left or something.
Yeah, and then it's just banishments and roundtable stuff, and you keep going, and then at some point... This is something that Dylan picked up on.
Yeah, he did, yes.
Which makes me think that he was in contact with production, or he saw the show ahead of time or something.
Yeah, okay, so like just to give everyone a little bit of context as to like what Dylan said was that so they know that there's an upcoming twist, but Dylan was the one that actually says, you know, it could be, you know, like this new format where a traitor is actually going to reveal themselves to a faithful.
Yeah.
You know, and that actually did just happen on the UK show.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure if he would have actually seen the UK version before this was filmed. I assume that, you know, it wouldn't have been the case. So in which case he might have maybe talked or, you know, or like gotten some kind of news from someone who's played it or production, because that's where his feel is.
Definitely. I think so. Because that was very out of the blue. And suddenly, how did you know that?
Yeah.
Did you get an advanced DVD screening or streaming or something?
Yeah, because
like,
it could have been anything. Like, you know, it could have been anything.
Yeah. So, looking ahead to next episode, it looks like Danielle has had her cake and is about to eat it too. Her dreams have come true, and now she's about to bring her bestie.
Okay, what do you think's going to happen?
Oh, okay. What I think is going to happen is they're just going to eat through this whole house alive, because the two of them together are going to be very formidable. But the poetic thing would be if Brittany betrays Danielle at the very last thing.
And do a Big Brother, like, you know...
repeats history.
Repeats history. That would be amazing.
And during the Traitors dilemma, so what happens at the end game is that you either share or you steal. I would love to see Brittany steal while Danielle shares, and Brittany just F's over her bestie a second time.
Okay.
That would be great.
Okay, so I would love I feel like there's going to be heat on Danielle now at the next roundtable.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a matter of time before someone will bring up her name. I don't actually think that she will get to the end. I believe that there might be people who are still suspicious of Danielle because her name has kind of like been there for a while.
Yeah.
The fact that she did, she attacked Caroline, you know, it feels like a recap of like Bob versus Bob. And I feel like she's going to get banished soon.
You can't leave her in the house.
I don't think you can.
If you're faithful. Like, you know, when they go, do you want to keep on voting? You cannot go to the end with Danielle.
Yeah.
And try to leave that up to a reveal. You have to get rid of her if she's faithful or traitor. There's too much sus.
Well, do you think Brittany will go to the end? Because I don't feel like Brittany will go to the end as well.
No, probably not. I want her to, but I think the two, in my mind, are Gabby and...
Maybe Dylan.
I think
maybe
Dylan
even Tom and Dolores.
Yeah, maybe even Tom and Dolores. You know, there's a lot of good players left. Tom has played a good game. He's gotten rid of a traitor.
Yeah.
Gabby has been very clued in and wise throughout it. Ivar has played a very shrewd social game.
Yeah, and Ivar, Dylan, and Gabby both suspect Danielle.
Yeah.
I think it's highly unlikely that she would go to the end.
No, she has to get killed.
Yeah,
next.
and also Brittany has had heat on her already.
Yes.
Before the fact that they're together as a block, you know,
very obvious.
It's quite obvious. Yeah. Like there's actually like what you said. I think there's still some very clever faithfuls.
Hopefully they figured this out. Who do you think is gonna win? Who do you want to win? Who do you think's gonna win? Let us know in the comments. I might leave a little voting thing on YouTube and on Spotify so you guys can give us a bit of feedback. And please tell us what you thought of this episode. I'd love to know what the general consensus is, or even the outlier consensus.
Yeah. And if you feel like a different way, if you actually feel like, okay, Danielle did a great job, you know, like slaying Caroline, and why you think that, why she had to
love to hear
you know,
it.
I think it's also good to have
healthy debate.
Yeah, healthy debate. Like, I mean, we have our perspectives as well. You know, and we kind of like support each. We're kind of in our own echo chamber.
You're the best. You can't do any wrong, girl. No. You stay you. You stay you.
Yeah. So we're kind of in our own echo chamber here. But I am curious. I would be curious to hear of another version of it. Like, you know, if you are a Danielle supporter.
Yeah, please.
I think it's a good chance to, you know, hear a different perspective. Okay, so guys, so we're gonna wrap this up, and thank you so much for listening to the show. This is the Wreckcreate Reality Podcast by Michael and Teresa. You can find us on Wreckcreate on TikTok and Instagram. That's WRECK.CREATE, where you can find funny short clips of what we've talked about. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe to our pod. It really helps us a big deal. We are extremely grateful for any support you give. We'll be back shortly with the next episode, so that's both Traitor and Survivor Australia. So stay tuned.
Thank you guys. See ya.